So I've got stuck into the mix now, and it took a couple of hours to do this mix, so I thought rather than just record the video whilst putting the mix together, it'd be quite a long video. I'll do the mix and then discuss each and everything that I've done in here. So the first thing I'm going to mention is this noise that we made in, or looked at how we made in the previous video. I've actually applied some automation on here. It's the only bit of automation I've not discussed yet, and it was just I've just put a high pass filter on here, so just to make the kind of it wasn't sounding very natural the way it was disappearing, so it sort of filters out now. A bit smoother because, as I was saying, that colour sort of sweeps down and the sound gets a little bit crushed. So I just thought it was quite to sort of filter it out, high pass filter it just a bit smoother the way it disappeared. Also, these vocals where I've had to unpack the folder and just, I noticed there was a clip, there wasn't a smooth tail the way I chopped the audio, so I needed to highlight all of the regions and put a little fade out on there to get rid of that. So that was something else that I did. And yeah, let's go through from the top then. So the first thing I did was up here I've created a sidechain trigger. So I've got this kick drum, bounced it out as audio, brought it in onto a separate channel, as you can see here, and I've taken the output off, so it's just no output on this audio channel, it's just the kick drum, and I'm just using this now as a trigger. So I've got my sidechain trigger set up, and the way I've placed this is this kick drum, or this sidechain trigger, should be following the kick like that. So whenever there's no kick, there's no sidechain trigger, and I didn't want that heavy sidechain thing in the breakdowns. I just want it to duck stuff out when the kick drum's sounding, you know, like the bass and the sub and what have you. So set up a sidechain trigger. The kick drum did a bit of work on this. For starters, I started introducing this virtual channel. It's by Select Digital. It's just mimicking everything going down through an analog desk. So I've loaded up this virtual channel. I've driven the input. I've set up onto the Brit end, which is emulating the sound of a Neve desk, and I've added a bit of drive. I'm also using the groups, so by having it set to group 1, I'm just kind of all these other sounds in here, every single sound is also got a virtual channel set to group 1. So that means that with them all on the same group, if I go right, I want to change some of the settings and change it to this Brit 4KG, that actually will do the same for each and every channel, where I have the virtual channel strip set up and assigned to group 1. Everything will get changed to 4KG. It just means you can change the sound of everything in one go, you know. And so you're just emulating these different types of desk. You could of course go to a different group if you wanted some customized settings on one channel. So so yeah, I started off with that on the kick drum. I then added a utility gain because there was a bit of stereo movement on there, so you can see that here. It's not right down the middle. If you watch this meter here, which is analysing the stereo spread or kind of stereo information in this track, if I turn this utility gain back on, it thins this out. And I wanted the kick drum right down the middle, didn't really want any stereo movement on there. And after that, I used the FabFilter Pro Q to tweak a few settings. So I've done quite a steep roll just to sort of 72 dB slope there to take away anything below 30 Hertz. I've boosted, I mean the great thing about this Pro Q2 is if you hover over the kind of spectral analysis of what's happening in the frequency, it holds this frequency shape of the sound, and then you can do this spectrum grab and start boosting or dipping things out, and it just creates this frequency band for you. And what I wanted to do was increase a little bit of weight in there, so did that for a low frequency, and it also tells me frequency relating to pitch. So I've boosted the A note, so I've boosted the fundamental because we knew the kick was in the key of A, was an A note. I've boosted that fundamental in there, so if I mute that band, it's adding a bit of weight, a bit of thump to the kick. I've taken out some lower mids, and I thought it was a bit harsh, kind of brash sounding in the top ranges, so I took away some of that top. So if I mute and unmute this EQ, it's just a bit softer, a bit weaker really, and just put it back on, there's more definition. I've also added a transient master, boosting the attack, just to boost the transient in the sound a bit, and that was it. And then the shaker, again the virtual channel, which is on everything now. Some Pro Q, just a sweep, just sweeping away all the low frequency out of this shaker. And because there's quite a nice sharp transient on the kick drum, I wanted to get rid of it on the shaker. Bit of a transient on there, I wanted to get rid of that, so I took this transient master on and just backed the attack off so it doesn't clash with the kick. I've also set up some reverb sends here, so the shaker's got a bit of reverb on. So I've set up 2 reverb sends, one's a plate reverb, and on here I've got the virtual mix bus. We'll talk about this when we get into the bus mix a bit more, but it's doing the same thing as the channel strip, but it's just for the buses. So I've got that on there, and I've got this Valhalla room verb with quite a short decay. Pulled the pre-delay down, tweaked the high cut and the depth. I think it was just a preset that I added some, I started tweaking a little bit. And then after that, I've got this FabFilter Pro Q. I'm sweeping away the low frequency out of the reverb, and I'm also cutting some of the high frequency from the reverb signal. And I'm also cutting away some of the, I'm doing a bit of mid-side processing here. So this frequency, or this cut here, what I'm doing is I'm cutting, you can see the S there, I'm cutting from the sides. So you can activate mid-side processing in the Pro Q2 in this channel mode. You can either go left and right or mids and sides. So if I load up a new band, I could go mids and sides, and then you could either process the sides or you could process the mid. So the mid is just what's the mono information in the sound, whereas the sides is the stereo information. And by sweeping away some of that side frequency in the reverb means I'm not going to get too much of a cluttering mix. When I collapse stuff down to mono, it's still going to work quite well. Even though it's a stereo reverb, there's some nice stereo information on that reverb. There's not any stereo in the lower frequency, so you don't really want too much stereo spread in the lower frequency. That's not really going to work so well as with the highs. You want them nice and bright and spread out wide. So that Pro Q2 is taking care of that. And then after that, I've got a sidechain compressor, and we'll look at some of the sidechaining in a bit, but this is sidechaining the reverb to the kick drum. So the reverb is getting ducked out when the kick drum's sounding. So you're getting, basically it's just cleaning up the mix, it's uncluttering things. So, and after the shaker I've got a clap. And I think I actually took the, initially we made the clap sound a little bit before the beat. I've actually taken that off and it just sounds on the beat now, so it's just a bit more straighter. And this has the virtual channel on it again. Pro Q2, just taking away the low frequency. I've added some stereo width to the clap, just to bring it out of the mix, just add some width to the drums. Just boosted these bands up here and turned on this stereoize and added quite a big delay on there. And then of course you want to reference how that clap's sounding in mono. Sounding alright. Next up was the closed hats. Virtual channel again. Some EQ, sweeping away the low, and I think there was a resonant spike on there on this band at about 3K, so you can hear that. So I heard a few resonant sounds on some of the hi-hats, so just sweeping around and just, you know, you can kind of boost the frequency band when you hear something like that that's not a very nice frequency. Just dip it out, just get rid of it. And I think I did a bit of this on the open hat as well, which is quite trashy, I found. Yeah, so I've done, if I highlight all of these, push these up, you can hear those frequencies. I just wanted to get rid of them, and the same with these. Quite nasty resonant frequencies, so I've just sort of dipped all of those out. And noise shakers. We'd already put some stereo widening, like some sample delay on there and stuff, but I've also added Pro Q, sweeping the lows off, and some sidechain compression. So if we load up the kick drum now and these shakers, and if I mute this sidechain, you know, we've got those 16th shakers. If I put that sidechain back on, ducking it out the kick drum, it's just providing that nice sort of housey, groovy element to things. And quite an extreme sidechain, 10 dB of ducking there, ratios at 4:1, put the threshold down, very sharp knee, fast attack, and pretty fast release. That's just working quite well, really. So we've got some tops as well, and these have just got some sweep the lows again, some stereo, pretty much identical imaging really to the clap, spreading it out, just adding a nice bit of width to the drums. And then what I've also done with all these drums is I've sent them to a bus. So sent to bus 1, which is here. So I have all the drums on one channel, and then we look at the bus mix in the next video. So the next thing up was the bass and the sub, and getting these to kind of work with the kick really. So for the bass drum, the bass sound, sorry, I've swept everything out of the bass up to about 140 Hertz because it's where most of the energy is in the kick drum. So I've swept it away from the kick, those lower frequencies, and they're going to be preserved for the sub and the kick drum. I've added this compressor here, just catching the peaks of the bass sound really. So it's not applying a lot of compression. It will be applying more in the breakdowns or when the bass is filtering. It's reining in some of those peaks. And then generally it's just compressing a lot but by small amounts. So reining in peaks, and it's just kind of firming up the sound really. Quite a, you know, ratios like 2:1 pretty much. Fast attack and release. And after that, I've added this Eosis EQ because I thought when we cut away all that low frequency with the Pro Q, we lost a bit of warmth from that bass. So I've added some at this frequency here, 150 Hertz. I've boosted by 1 dB, then about 350 or 330 Hertz I've boosted by just over 1 dB. I mute these. Sounds a lot thinner, and it's kind of compensating for sweeping away all the low frequency from the bass. I've also added a bit of highs, a bit of air up here, and then like just under 2K I've boosted by less than a dB. You mute that EQ and it's just the sound's a lot thinner. Just adds nice warmth. Then we've got the sub. And very tight curve. I mean, I noticed the sub was doing some stuff. I think it's the FabFilter Pro Q analyzer is causing Logic to crash a bit here. It's quite a lot of sub frequency right down here, which I think would just muddy things up. So very kind of tight curve. Yeah, 72 dB slope again, and just sweeping below about 30 Hertz. And then I've got this heavy, quite extreme sidechain compression on here, ducking it out of the kick drum. But I noticed if I take the kick and the shaker out here, I noticed that was causing clips on the sound due to the low frequency content of the sub, and those fast attack and release times was causing a bit of clicking if you listen. So what I've done is, after the sidechain compressor, I've added a low pass filter. It's sweeping all of that away basically. So sub's a lot smoother. So then we come to the ARPs. So with these ARPs, I just thought, you don't even want to start thinking about processing these individually because they're all effectively the same sound. So I've sent them all straight to bus. I put the virtual channel on them all. Then on this bus, I've EQ'd all 3 ARPs just with a low cut. Compress them here, and this is just quite a soft compressor, light with the bass. Reining in the peaks, especially when it's filtering it out. About 3 dB there. When the ARPs are kind of filtered down, it's hardly, hardly compressing at all. It's only when it's sort of opening up and effectively like boosting the volume of the ARPs quite a lot. I wanted the ARPs really nice and wide as well, so I've added this isotope imager. Spreading it out, adding nice width. It's not destroying the sound to phase or anything. I collapsed to mono. And then the sidechain compressor on the ARPs. And if you notice as well here, so if I solo up this ARP and the kick, I've also got some sidechain filtering on. So I set this sidechain compressor, and I just thought we could use a sidechain filter in here and just duck the low frequencies out of the signal when the kick drum sounds. And we can do this with sidechain filtering. I could sweep it away and just duck the high frequencies if I wanted, but I thought the low frequencies that's where the kick drum is, that's where we want to duck the ARP. So we don't necessarily need to duck all the highs. So do that, stuck in the whole frequency range there. By bringing this down, I'm just selecting, anything above say 500 or so Hertz is not going to get sidechained at all, and everything below will. So quite handy sidechain filtering in these instances, because the ARP, we can leave that high frequency untouched. That's quite nice on the ARP, and then just duck it out of the kick drum frequency range, like right down here, like 100 or 200 Hertz. And also I've got this ARP is being sent to the other reverb send, which is identical to the plate verb, except I've got the Valhalla vintage verb on here, which is just more of an effecty reverb, a longer decay time. just a really nice sound and reverb. It's probably not so good for drums or something like that, but it's great for synth sounds and vocals, and when you want that big sort of effecty kind of reverb on there. And then we're on to the brass pads now. So these have got a low cut on them as well. There's a bit of low frequency on those brass pads. Some stereo imaging to bring them out of the mix, which you won't notice when it's kind of filtered out, but on these sounds where the filter opens out a bit, it's quite nice and wide. It just makes it sound a bit bigger. Works when collapsed to mono. And some sidechain compression, which is only going to be effective when the kick comes in here. And again, sidechain filtering, so I'm just ducking the low frequencies on these pads. It's a bit softer as well. There's only like 6 dB of sidechain compression happening now. Next up are the vocals, and again I wanted to treat these in the same way as the ARP, so I bust them straight away, and then this vocal bus, swap the lows out, this is just catching the peaks. So it might not really, that compressor is probably only going to be, when we start doing that automation with the timeless delay and we start messing around with the filter, and the resonance of the filter goes quite high, and you've got that delay freeze, this compressor just kicks in and just reins in some of that stuff a bit. I do think this vocal gets lost in the mix a little bit now, so when we look at the bus mix we might look at how we can address that. Also got sidechain compression on these vocals, sidechain filtering again, just ducking the lows out of the signal. And then finally it was the noise sounds that we created. Again I've bussed to an effects bus. And on the effects bus I've added a sidechain compressor, so you'll hear it on this pad here, on this noise. That noise there ducking out of the kick drum. And on the actual channels themselves, I've just done a low frequency cut on the noise, both the noise effect sounds, and that's about it. So we'll give it a bit of a spin and see where we're at with the mix now. Referencing the frequencies on this multimeter, stereo movement. Mix is peaking at maybe about -7, -6 dB, which is leaving plenty of headroom for the mastering stage. So I think the next thing to do is look at the bus mix and maybe just look at some Slate Digital processing and how we can just kind of get a nice warm sound on that bus mix. So we'll look at that in the next video. Alright, cheers.